afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Lori Gilhousen. I'm a registered nurse and certified diabetes education. I'm a certified diabetes care and education specialist at Ashtabula County Medical Center. I'm glad you're joining us this afternoon and hope you're enjoying a nice lunch and this beautiful sunny day that we happen to be having in the middle of November. I was going to talk to you about why you might want to see the diabetes care and education specialist or have them in contact with your team. It's one of those things you're like, I've lived with diabetes for years. Why would I want to talk to somebody? Or it might be just that you feel like everything's going okay and that maybe things are fine. And there's just some points to touch base where, once you get living it for a while, you may come up with some questions or concerns, or family and friends may be a part of that puzzle too. Because as much as we call diabetes sugar, it's so much more than just the sugar. Food choices is a piece of our puzzle too, but it's not the only piece of our puzzle. And there's lots of little aspects of this that we need to tailor this to you, because you might have noticed, even if you're in the pre-diabetes group, where it's kind of like it's knocking on your door, but it didn't cross yet, that there's some things that one person says this way and another thing says that way, and it's finding what works for you, which is the most amazing science that we've come through in the last few years that I've been doing diabetes education for almost 15 years now. And we've had a program at the hospital that's welcome to see anybody. Your insurance covers this with your primary physician's order. Whoever's going to be dealing with your diabetes management, right now the insurance says that's the person that needs to order, and they will cover some level of us sitting down and just talking about what works good for you. When was the last time you celebrated, this is what was working great? And then maybe there's like, I'm having a challenge here. Sometimes when someone else is helping you look at things, we can find something that might be what's causing the challenge. So when you're living it day to day to day to day to day, once in a while it's like you're in the middle of the forest and you start to not see the trees. So that's that piece where we can get together and talk about what's working, where are the challenges, being diagnosed with diabetes, even being diagnosed with pre-diabetes. There's a bit of a shock. There's a bit of the, oh my goodness. Sometimes there's that, oh, well, I was wondering when that was going to happen. And so that's a wonderful time to sit down with me or any other CDE or a diabetes education person, or even the dietitian or the pharmacist. There are a lot of skill levels that can be the certified diabetes care and education person, because we're looking at helping you get a plan that's going to keep you safe. You may feel fine, and I have learned not to say you'll feel better. You'll tell me you'll feel better if things were really off kilter and we got things back into safer areas, and you do come back and tell me I did feel better. At the very beginning, you might not have noticed the symptoms. Thank you for finding it before you had problems. Most times, diabetes is getting diagnosed by your routine blood work. Sometimes it's not getting diagnosed for a long time. So you might notice high blood sugars make you more thirsty, more hungry, more tired, more irritable, things just aren't working as good as they used to, but you're plowing through. Like through the summer when it was really hot, you're drinking more fluid, so you're going to the bathroom more, and you kind of go, well, of course I'm drinking more because it's hot and I'm working longer hours. I'm tired, and you worked longer hours than you're used to, and you go, oh, well, I'm older, of course I'm tired. And it was blood sugars creeping up out of the safer zone that might have been contributing to that tired, and those extra trips to the bathroom all night long. Not sleeping well is a big indicator of other health issues too, and they all combine together. So getting checked up or checked out whenever you're curious about, hey, something's not quite right. At diagnosis, it's like, why? What were the things that led up to the diagnosis? Family history is a piece of it. Nationality can be a part of it, but it's not the end all and the be all. weight is sometimes a challenge with this, but it's not the only piece of the puzzle. And we start to lose track of that. There's lots of things to do for diabetes too. At whatever stage of the journey you are in, there is something that we can do. We can work together to find something that'll work for you. So, like at diagnosis is one of the first times to meet up with diabetes care and education person on your team, because there are a lot of things that help manage, help stay on top of, help track, a lot of problem solving. It's all about more healthy coping, looking for patterns, staying healthy, reducing risks where we can see risks starting or on the plate already. How can we change it a little bit? Every little change you make helps your health down the road too. So don't feel like, oh, it's just one little thing. Every one little thing that puts you on that path towards being safe gets us where we want to go. Slow. It's not a get there tomorrow and be done. So a lot of times we will talk about food. You can't kind of talk about diabetes without talking about food. You got two great people on your team in the food department. I'm kind of going to help you look at it, compare it with blood sugars, compare it with how you feel after a meal if we're not checking blood sugars. And our dietitian, registered nutrition dietitian person, are both on your team there to help make that plate work the best for you. So you'll notice that we don't say, no, you cannot have it anymore. And those of you that are worried about your support team and all the family and friends supporting your efforts towards diabetes management, you can end up in the season where they get in your face and want to say, you can't have that, you have diabetes. So kind of stay somewhere not around what's going on. You've planned your day, and yes, you know you have diabetes. It doesn't go away. It doesn't give you a vacation. It might get in well control and be in remission kind of thing, but it's still something to stay aware of, because when we've got the dance just right and the body's working right, we can forget. The body will change over time, which is the other weird thing with diabetes. Once we learn all these basics of getting a safe starting point, every year you live with diabetes, things change. Your body changes a little bit. Maybe it's time to shuffle the deck a little bit better about the activity levels or the food choices, or the medications might have changed. There's things to touch base and make sure we're still safe. Did the A1C move in the way we wanted it to move? Are the numbers that you're seeing, if you're checking, where you want them to be? You check out once in a while around certain things. Is that doing what you want it to do? And if you get a number that you don't like, especially like after a year of working really hard at this, it's real easy to say, yeah, that number is never what I want to see, so why look? Well, if it's never what you want to see, it's a great time to come see the dietitian or the diabetes care and education people, because there might be something in the plan that we need to tweak and get you back to being safe and feeling strong and protecting you from challenges that happen with high blood sugar numbers. Maybe you're having lows. We got to fix that. But fixing low blood sugars does not necessarily mean leaving your blood sugars way so high that would cause other problems. And sometimes when we're too high for too long, when the number does come down, that coming down too fast makes that low farther down than it might have been. So, paying attention to when those things are happening. Another piece of our puzzle is, once again, further down the road, as we age, we might need help reading the bottles of the medicine. I don't know about you, but I'm sometimes having a really hard time on those child-proof lids. If the medicine's too hard to open, there's a good chance you might not be taking it. There are lots of different ways to take medicines. We have some medicines for diabetes now that are once a week, and they are wonderful if they're right for you, and at the right dose for you, and if you're getting the results that you're looking for when you're taking them. Sometimes cooking and the types of food that all of a sudden taste good or work for you may change over time. Sometimes we've had a stroke, so all of a sudden using both hands to check blood sugars is not as easy. as it was when with weakness from one side or the other, or you've had a shoulder thing where it's harder to reach, like if you've got one of the meters where you've got to reach to scan. Can you reach over there? Maybe you can't. And those are things that we can touch base with and make sure we're seeing well. Eyesight changes over time. So sometimes you need the magnifying glass. So, those little tweaks of, can you still safely use your medicine? So if you're using a vial and a syringe for your insulin, these lovely little lines in here get hard to see. Or some days you have to look uphill to see the lines. Sometimes you have to look downhill. There's some tools and adaptations to make it a little easier. One is like a magnifier glass that kind of lets you hold the bottle, hold the syringe, hold everything together, and maybe see a little bit better. Or at least take some of that unsteadiness out. I've had a few people that I've worked with that the grip to hold the pen gets weaker sometimes. So how can we make it so you can hold your pen to be steady when you do your injection? Or even getting the needle on the end. Another really common thing at any stage in life here where we have meds is what happens when you forget? And how often are we forgetting? Those are other touch points that we work together as a team to help make sure we stay safe. There's a couple of neat things for insulin, like if you need a reminder, like exactly how long has it been since I took my last dose of insulin and how much did I take? It's a smartphone device app that goes with a smart pen that you use that pen for the year, but you put a glass cartridge in instead of the disposable pen. Pens are great because the insulin's already in here. You're cleaning off an end, you're putting the needle on the end, you do the safety check to make sure that needle is going to work and not drip the insulin on the wrong sides of things. Dial up to your dose, do your snap, crackle, pop to get it back to the 0 because you pressed it down. Count to 10 before you pull out. And then the other challenge, as you have years and years of diabetes, years of maybe using insulin, do you have pockets of areas where you do your injections that aren't working anymore? Yeah, you can get scar tissue. And it's common to accidentally use the same couple of spots. And that's one of those touch points of like, you're telling me about doing your shots, I'm making sure you know how to do them. And then we kind of feel this up and we go, oh, maybe this is what the challenge might be. Because you did your part, but the body and the medicine couldn't do their part. So getting a number when you're checking doesn't always mean that it was something you did wrong. It might mean that your body's not using the stuff as good as it could. Or maybe it's time to shuffle the deck a little bit for you. One of the tools we use for that is an A1C. So that is the cute little blood work that we do once every 3 months when you're over 7, or maybe twice a year, depends on what other issues are going on. If you're in the pre-diabetes world, they might do this blood level maybe once every other year, maybe once every 2 or 3 years, depends on what else is on your plate and your health. But it's how soaked in sugar your red blood cells are. So it's the big picture. It's like the whole entire looking at the sunset at the lake. It's not looking at the puffy cloud over here and the little wave over there and the little rock in the sand over here. Those are your finger checks. And even if you only get a finger check blood sugar at a health fair or when you're at the doctor's office, those little bits are part of the big picture. The A1C is the whole picture, but it doesn't tell you how many minutes of the day are you right in the zone where we want you to be, where you're safe and healthy, because everybody's exact level of where is safe is different, okay? We know that we have to pick it for you, but let's make it as safe as it can be for as long as we can keep it safe for you, and then adjust it as we need to. So if you're getting lots of lows, we might need to move that A1C level up a little bit. And if you're too high too often, the goal is to bring you down each step that we can without getting you too low. One of the other tools in our toolbox, and a few months back, Ben Miola mentioned it, and I think he mentioned it in his summer or spring talk at the Lunch and Learn. He talked about the continuous glucose monitors. And that's a wonderful tool that will let you see what your blood sugar does every minute of the day for a period of as little as 10 days to as much as 14 days. So the fun part here, blood sugar, we talked about that being those little spots in the picture. It's always changing. Sometimes it's steady. Sometimes it's climbing slow. Sometimes it's climbing fast. Sometimes it's slowing down again, steady. Sometimes you drop a little bit. You know, the walk, the food choice, the meds kicking in can lower your blood sugar to a safe and steady. Sometimes it lowers it too fast or too much. And that's where we want to be prepared to treat lows. And that's one of those pattern things that we look for is, when do you feel like, hey, I need something else? Hey, that meal didn't quite last as long as I needed it to. Are the meals too far apart? So the one neat thing, which I thought I had it right here, which of course I don't. Wait 1 second. There is a lovely little thing in this checkout that will show you a graph of high, low, perfect. There it is. You know, the best part is it compiles the length of time you wore the sensor, tells us how much time you spent in the green zone, tells you how much time was a little too low, how much time was a little high, how much time was too high, and then it helps us inform decisions on where do we need to make some changes or what's working good, and we can celebrate. Hey, look, this section's really great. Let's repeat more of that. Okay, so the neat thing is you can do this professionally instead of having to have all the equipment if your insurance doesn't allow it at the time. But if you are doing multiple doses and you're changing your doses based on your blood sugars, a lot of insurances will pay for the little device that you change out once every 10 days or the other one that is once every 14. There are pros and cons to both, and it's which ones will work best for you and match what you need. But even just doing the pro sensor session where you use our equipment, fresh sensor for everybody, and can learn. You know, it's a great way to go, what's going on when I'm not looking between the finger pokes, because that is kind of amazing to see how much change there is between those finger pokes that are maybe in the target zone, and you don't know when you're low. You don't know if you're too high or how long you stay there or when your meds kick in. That's the other wonderful tool that you can see with this is that your meds, you can see when your insulin really kicks in. You can see when your sulfonylurea pills that are like that cheerleader for your pancreas to say, come on, give me another drop of insulin, actually start to work. So that's kind of a fun thing that way too. But tracking, and bring your stuff with you when you come to the doctor's office. Bring your meter, bring your notes, bring your log sheet, bring your calendar, whatever record that you decide to use to keep track of what works, what doesn't work, where your questions are. Because the question you have on the first week of the month or 3 months ago, you're not going to remember 3 months later when you're back with a follow-up visit. Or if you started something new and you don't see changes, call and let them know, hey, it's been this amount of time since my meds, since we made this change, I'm not seeing something. Just to touch base in between visits, if you have the MyChart or an electronic way or just the old-fashioned call and leave the phone message to touch base and check in of what's going on. Big thing with the holidays coming up is our plate. And there's a few interesting ways that we do our plate. Try to balance a small plate, not the huge plate, but it's the holiday coming up. So what is the one favorite thing you're looking forward to at the holidays? Because there's some of our favorite foods are only here at the holiday. Okay, so plan your meal to go, I really want this. I could live without that because I could get it every day. Because my baked potato has lost its aluminum foil. It escaped out the bottom. A lot of times people will do potatoes and sweet potatoes at the same meal. They're both carbs. Then the vegetables Sometimes it ends up being corn and peas. Oh, you got lucky, I left the peas at home in my office. But then we have stuffing with some of the meat dishes too. Well, those are all high carbs. And then we got to have, there might be pie in this. Or the cranberry sauce that could be higher carbs. So choose where you want to spend your carbs. You may want to suggest, if you can, bringing the non-starchy veggies for the veggie dish instead of the peas and corn. If you've got the option and it's your plate, skip the one potato that you get all the time and maybe get the special potato that's only there at the special time. Think about what is that favorite food, that favorite taste that you're looking for, and then let's rearrange the plate so that you can have room for that food. The turkey's lean, the white meat's the leanest, dark meat, if you like it, it's a little more cholesterol, but it's one meal. Remember, it's one meal. So many of our holiday meals between November and February, it's 1 or 2 or 3 meals out of 900 and some odd meals if you're doing 3 meals a day. So just be careful with the 1 or 2. You got to be careful with all of them as best as you can. But loading up the plate with those non-starchy veggies help fill you up faster, give you fiber to slow things down. The protein piece of the plate, about the size of the deck of cards, can help. Sometimes you need a little more, sometimes a little less. If you're hungry before your next meal, it's add a little more of the protein or add a little more of the non-starchy veggies. And maybe a little bit of starchy veggie wins. Maybe the piece of fruit wins instead of the vegetable. It depends on what special needs that you have, what carb count you're aiming for, how you're going to space this out throughout the day. So that's the meal plan down and dirty in 2 seconds. One of the best tools you've got for the meal planning, or what's this food choice do? What's this snack choice going to do? The food labels, they're changing them up. This is the new food label. So they're going to put the portion size. It's not the size you have to eat. It's what they use to answer the questions on the form. Okay? So the portion size, actually grab those measuring cups. Don't cheat yourself out of food, please. Grab the teaspoon if it has the nerve to tell you something is 1 teaspoon. The cooking teaspoon is what they're talking about, not the teaspoon in the drawer, in your silverware drawer. Carbs is the total carbs here. There's some neat stuff that's already in the total. So the new thing that they've added is that includes added sugar. So sugar's already been on that label. The sugar is already included in the total. So that added sugar is somebody else's taste bud said, hey, a pinch more, let's put this. Or someone said, hey, if we put another scoop of that in here, it'll last on the shelf another month or 2. So that's what that added sugar means. Looking for fiber in your grains. When you're going to do a carb, make it a quality carb. Cook it as best as you can without too much additions or extras. But all of the fiber, sugar, and including added sugar, is all included in total carbohydrates. Okay, so that's that one little tool that the label is not necessarily for the entire package. This particular label tells me that the whole package has 8 servings in it. So if it's something I would have eaten the whole package of in a day or 2, I get to multiply everything on here 8 times. Yeah, it's interesting. Sometimes busy, stress, eating, we don't maybe pay attention to our hunger cues, or we're too busy and we work past our hunger cues. So actually paying attention to what's on the plate, that mindfulness, that gauging, how hungry am I? How full am I? We don't exactly want to eat till we're stuffed. And we sure don't want to wait till we're the ravenous wolf where everything in the kitchen looks good while you're cooking dinner. So it's being sure to, on these holiday meals, don't skip breakfast and lunch because you're waiting for supper. Or if, sometimes special meals end up being a little bit later than your regular lunchtime. Sometimes Thanksgiving dinner ends up at 3 o'clock and you usually eat at noon. Well, guess what? Please go ahead and eat something small at noon, maybe a snack, so that when you get to dinner, you're not starving. And then you can make those safer choices. And it's easier to save room for what you really want to spend your carbs on that particular day or that particular meal. Okay? And activity is a big thing too. Today's a wonderful day to maybe go out and take a walk, or maybe take a cup of coffee or a cup of tea out and enjoy the sunlight. It's like nice outside right this minute when I walked into here for this. Take advantage of some physical activity things. It doesn't have to be horribly organized, but to have a spot where each day, 2 or 3 times in the day, you get up and stretch. You know, the American Diabetes Association has a thing about moving every 30 minutes. So, you know, making sure that we can tap the feet sometimes, doing stretchy bands, doing Sukan arm lifts, checking out the portion sizes of your apples. You know, if it's a 2-pound apple, you want to get 4 meals out of that or more, or a 1-pounder, because 4 ounces is your serving size. But doing muscle things, doing walking things, doing relaxation things. Sometimes the best thing you can do for any of your chronic diseases is something that's relaxing to you, because that helps settle some of the stress hormones. You know, finding out what we can do to keep you safe. And then watching as things change, because life is all about change. Chronic diseases are all about change as well. That's one of the other times to check in. You know, we have a complication develop, or the numbers are just stuck and they aren't moving anywhere. That's another time to let's get together and see what we can do, see what we can change. Sometimes your target numbers will change as age happens, as complications happen. Yeah, if you've got some heart disease and high blood sugar, or together with some high blood pressure, we need to make some other changes. Sometimes that nice tighter control that you could do at your first diagnosis with diabetes isn't safe anymore. And that's once again where we change, when complicating factors change. Other things happen too. You move to a new area, or you always did all of your own care and now you need some help, and someone who's coming to help wasn't always part of the hands-on day-to-day stuff. They need to understand what's going on. You know, or you change where you live. You know, so maybe you always could walk in your neighborhood, and now you're living in a place that maybe you don't feel comfortable walking, or it's not available now, and you've got to find a different way. You know, how many people used to walk at the store, or we used to mall walk, and for the last 2 years we've had to go and figure out a different place to walk, a different place to be safe walking. Checking the numbers to see how food choices affect you. You know, there's this really interesting tool with when you can check your blood sugar to see for yourself, hey, this plate, what did my body do with it? Hey, check it out again 2 or 3 or 4 times to make sure that that portion is what's safe for you. Care needs will change as your other diagnoses or other diagnoses do come. And those are other wonderful times for us to touch base. Maybe you want to connect up with some tools to help make the diabetes management a little easier. We've got some really cool ways to deliver certain medicines. We've got lots of new pills out there. There's like 3 new pills that came out just a few years ago, and we've got new uses for them. We're finding that when we combine a few things together, they work better for you. And so always working with your healthcare team, being in a partnership with your healthcare team. So, you know what your targets are. So you know where we're driving on this road and on this journey to stay together, to be safe. If you are having times where you're like, geez, I don't know what's going on, but something's not quite right, mark it down. Even if you don't poke your finger, if you're kind of finding like, hey, I need to eat a snack every day at 10. Well, why is that? Let's look at what's going on. Waking up in the middle of the night. How many extra trips are we getting through the night? Sometimes it's something with your blood sugar shifting. Sometimes it's when is a pill working at its strongest, or when is your system at its most tired. Sleep is one of those things too, because the plan doesn't always work as good when you're exhausted. But then let's own the exhausted and acknowledge that that happens. Because a lot of times, you live this every day, so you maybe don't notice that a night that you had more pain, numbers are rougher the next day. Maybe you don't notice how many nights you're not getting good sleep. That's where some of the new fun stuff of like, well, let's see how well you sleep through the night. Or getting a sleep study if you have those challenges and seeing if things need to change with that. Because those are all key to heart health, diabetes health. You know, we're working on keeping your eyes and your kidneys and your nerve endings all working as good as they can. Any part of your body that needs blood flow needs the blood sugar to be as safe as we can go, because when it's high, it doesn't flow as good as it should. You know, and that's sometimes the key that you'll notice for lows or highs. Hungry is on both sides of that fence. The only way you know for sure is poke and see. Let me think here. Did I miss anything? Do you have questions? I'm looking at my toys to see what I forgot to talk about while we were going through all these lovely steps and tricks of the trade. And I know we talked about low blood sugars every once in a while. And with the holidays, there's some things because schedules are off, meds might be off. Be ready to treat a low blood sugar. So if you can, poke your sugar. You know, if you can, poke first. If you can't, treat it first, because if you're going down fast, you don't want to wait too long. I mean, if you were really, really high and came down to a semi-safe number, your body is still going to send out all the red flags of, oh my gosh, we just dropped. But you know, if whatever the food choice was, the activity, the stress, whatever, got you too high, and you drop down safe quick, your body's going to say, hey, wait a minute, I just lost some blood sugar. Maybe we need to treat it, maybe we don't. That's why it's always good to check and mark it down, what was going on, what time of day did it happen. You're driving, and we're in the middle of snow or the road construction, you're not going to be able to pull off to the road and check your blood sugar. So having something when you're driving right there ready to open. Glucose tablets are a wonderful, quick, easy sugar. Your body doesn't have to spend a lot of time breaking them down. That's why it's kind of like one of the preferred ways to fix a low blood sugar, because it's one of those things, it's medicine for the medical emergency of being low. You can buy it off the counter, but you're not going to sit here and go, geez, I really would love a sweet. You're not going to just maybe eat these guys because they're sweet. And that's kind of like why it's good to have, because when you're low, you don't want to have had snacked off of your treatment. You want 4 of these. And some people know they need 1 or 2 because they've done the homework. They've taken it, checked your blood sugar. If you pumped up to 70 or 50 points in those few minutes, great. If not, then you know you need more. Some people need more, some people need less. If you did a juice or a pop, 4 ounces will raise you between 30 and 60 points in 10 minutes flat. So once again, if you're drinking juice, we'd rather you have the piece of fruit when you're having a snack. When you're treating an emergency that's low, that 4 ounces of juice, that 4 to 6 ounces of a pop will bring you back up to 70 or 80. And you will learn, hey, I'm better off if I get myself up to 80. Then you need to follow it up with something that's going to sustain you. You want a protein then, you want a fat. Don't start with the chocolate bar. Read the ingredient list and you'll see why. Fat delays the absorption of the carb part. So if you're low and the arrow's going straight down, if you have one of these devices that you scan and it gives you an arrow, you want a fast fix because in 15, 20 minutes you want to be back up to 80. The danger is that it feels terrible. So we overdo it, you know, instead of the lovely little 4 ounces of juice, we have a big 16 ounces of juice or pop or whatever. And now we're back up to 300 something. And it starts a terrible roller coaster ride because the juice, the glucose tablets, the glucose, this is glucose gel liquid. It's a liquid or the gel stuff. It's a quick fix to get you to 80, but it's not going to stick to your ribs. So that's the other piece of this. You want to follow it up with some food. If your meal is more than an hour away, it is not a time to go, oh, geez, I just spent 30 or 60 grams of carbs fixing a low. I can't have any carbs at my meal. Please, that's the one meal. We need to tuck a carb in to replenish the emergency supply. And the trick is to find out how did we get here? If we can explain the low because we had a glass of wine 2 days ago with dinner, that could possibly be why we went low. Or we forgot our pills, or we thought we took our pills and then we accidentally took them twice instead of only once. Those are explainable. You know, you burnt the toast and had to shovel snow. Yes, that's why we're low. Yeah, be safe with the snow when it comes. And the ice too. Open the package beforehand, because if you are low, trying to organize how in the world do I flip the top off, let alone find, like this one I have never opened because I keep it on hand to give to somebody in my office. I'm having a hard time figuring it out, and my blood sugar isn't low right now. So that's the one thing people share with me often is like, you know, you really got to open that container so that it's easy to open and get to the sugar tablets when you need them. Okay, so treat the low, mark it down so we know. Because part of it is looking for a pattern of when are you low? And then what's going on that gets us low? Because sometimes we need to adjust medicine. You know, we talked about scar tissue. Maybe you hit a new spot that hasn't been scarred, and your body uses that insulin very briskly because those tissues were healthy and ready to break down that insulin. But that dose was for those scarred areas. So sometimes that can happen if you use a different arm, or when you get a new supply of insulin supplies. If you're on insulin, the pen needles, they maybe change the size of your needle on you. So always make sure that before you cross that magic line at the pharmacy that you've got what you had intended to get. Get rid of some of the mess in front of I just realized you guys are all getting a big mess here. Another cool way to get your insulin, if your lungs are good, we have inhaled insulin still for mealtime. You know, you might still need the injection for the 24-hour coverage, because 1 minute, one part of your insulin coverage is every minute of the day. The brain needs a little insulin so the sugar gets in there to function. Muscles need that little bit of sugar parked in them so that you can do your workout. Their body will use whatever way it can to get its sugar, whatever eating style or meal planning you are using. Your body is still using sugar to function. So there's always that little bit of need for that little bit of insulin to keep your body moving. Then we have that, here's my plate. How much insulin do I need for my plate? And then later on there's, okay, my sugar's way up here and it needs to be down here. How much do I need to get it down safe? So that's that correction, then the coverage, but then you've got your long-term, every minute of the day need too. And they all need to dance together well. When we're stepping on, if all the carers are stepping on each other's toes, it doesn't make the dance very safe. So we want to be safe with our dance and matching things up to what you need, when you need it, how you need it. Lots of different tools, lots of different tricks of the trade out there to help you stay on target and stay safe and be as close as possible, because nothing's going to be perfect, because our bodies are going to change over time. They're going to change how we use our medicine. They're going to change, and we're going to keep coming up with new ways to keep you safe, new ways to help you monitor, new ways to use the numbers that you get. You know, so if you're checking now, how do you use those numbers? You know, think about, what does that number mean to you? You know, it's a checkpoint in your day. It's not a test. It's not a judge. It's, body, what are you doing right now? Hey, what might have added to the body getting this number that I got right now? Is it the best poke you could take? You know, soap and water, wash your hands. At home, dry on the paper towel, because the kitchen towel's got all that good kitchen stuff on it. A fresh needle, because you don't want any sugar from the last blood sugar check in your next check. Fresh test strips is another big piece of the puzzle. And having that meter that your insurance will pay for the test strips for. And there are ways when we're in that challenge of sometimes deductibles are high or copays are high. Talk to the providers, talk to the diabetes care and education people, because we can help find some ways to get things covered or find what will work for you in your lifestyle. We got to make this plan work for you. It's not about you living in our plan. And that's why we don't give you that food list anymore that says, hey, here, this is what you have to eat. I have to make the care match what you can do. And that's what our biggest goal is to get you safe and help you find what will work best for you. So, I don't know if there's any questions coming in. No? Okay. I don't know how much time I have spent, so I'm going to cheat and look at my watch. Oh, okay. I think that I forgot to talk about being safe with sharps. You know, whether we're poking our finger with that lancet or you're taking insulin with pens or needles. The needles, you need to get rid of your sharps in something that's hard and plastic. So you can buy the lovely little sharps container thing. If you don't have that, a liquid laundry detergent jug or an old bleach bottle, because you want all those sharps to get where they're not going to poke you. You know, if you go to like the EPA site for tips, the 2-liter pop bottle is still on there. I don't know, you probably remember 20, 30 years ago, that pop bottle could maybe stand the test of time. Today you pick it up and you're kind of like, I'm surprised this thing is not breaking in the middle of me holding on to it. Because they're thinner plastic now. Even aluminum cans used to be heavier, now they're very thin. And our needles can poke through and poke you. You've already poked yourself once for the blood sugar, thank you. You've poked yourself for your insulin or your GLP-1 hormone stuff or your other injectables. We don't need to get poked again on trash night. And nobody else in the whole recycle trash maintenance needs to get poked either. So putting your sharps, even like razors, even a broken glass, you know, put it in something solid so it won't cut through the bag. And when you do this, when it's almost full, because, you know, the nice part with the bleach bottle or the laundry detergent jug, if it falls over, 1 or 2 things are going to fall out. If you're still lucky enough to find a coffee can that you tape the lid on and put a hole in, if it falls over, everything falls out. And the other challenge too, and I know I have a glass here, don't use a glass jar. Because once again, if this breaks, now you've got glass and needles. You know, and I don't know about you, but glass likes to go and hide in the weirdest places. And as soon as you think you got it all cleaned up, a month or 2 later, you still find some more that's still there. So when it's mostly full, to make sure we all stay safe, mark it as a sharp so nobody goes, oh, you forgot a recyclable, because when it's been used as a sharps container, it's not recyclable. Or write don't recycle. Don't write needles, okay? Because granted, nobody can use this past the insulin pen thing, but you don't need that stress in your life. Tape the lid down so that it doesn't pop off in the trash. And then in our county, we don't have needle reclaim. If you travel, other states have different rules about what to do with their needles. Okay, so when you're traveling, be very careful with what they do with the needles, because we're not throwing them in the trash. Even at the hospital, it might look like we are, but our sharps containers are usually very close to the trash can. We're putting them in a hard plastic dedicated container because nobody needs to get poked outside of the one you did when you washed your hands or alcoholed it off. You know, use the side of your fingers for those pokes. Write down the numbers so we can use them. Bring your tools with you. Bring your questions. You know, that's a big thing is, you know, like, you get the questions as you're living this day to day to day. And they're worthy to be discussed at your visit. There's so much that happens at a doctor's office visit that maybe you're, you know, you might be still working out one thing and there were 3 things later. I try very hard, and sometimes I'm bad about it, so I try very hard to start with, what can I help you with? Where's your questions or concerns? Because it's really about making this work for you, and we will get to all the stuff on my list. I like to do it by the way you want to learn. What's important for you today? Where do we need to look and see how things are going, or where the challenges might be? Okay, so the reason we worry about your A1C is that we know that the higher your numbers are, the longer they stay higher, it gets you complications faster. Okay, so about the whole thing from the time diabetes or even pre-diabetes is mentioned, we're all about trying to save the beta cells that are still making insulin so that they can stick around and be there for the long haul. And every step towards safe we go helps keep that body and your cells working as long as we possibly can on their own, or whatever help needs to be there. So making sure make sure to niche in a little bit of activity. It doesn't have to be a whole chunk at once. Several small chunks is just as safe and strong as one big long chunk. A lot of times muscle strength training things is huge because we start to lose muscle mass, and I learned that from Ben in the last session, and I was like, I kind of forgot about the fact that he said you lose 10% of your muscle every 10 years. And that kind of makes sense, because if you think about it, we're not using them, or we start to get worried about falling, so we're not walking. So that makes the falling challenge even harder because we're losing those muscles as we don't use them. So it doesn't mean we're going to go out and be huge bodybuilding. It's toning. It's keeping those balance exercises. It's doing whatever we can. Wherever you can in your day. Sometimes your day at work, you could do things that would make it a little bit of a muscle challenge. Sometimes it's let's go take an extra long walk to the water fountain, or 2 laps around the place to get to the water fountain, to make sure we get our water in, because that's another huge key piece of being healthy too. And staying in touch with those, what checkups should we have with diabetes? You know, when you first get diagnosed, we're going to suggest you see the ophthalmologist or get a dilated eye exam for diabetes within a few months of getting diagnosed, because you've already had challenges with higher blood sugars for 5 to 10 years before the blood work said diabetes. So we want to make sure that your eyes are safe. We're going to do a urine check for baby proteins, like the precursor to the big protein. Are your kidneys challenged? The older we get, the more challenged our kidneys are. But then we put blood sugar and blood pressure on there, it challenges it even more. And then once again, they're both blood vessel things. So with the eye, they're looking at changes in your blood vessels in the eye. And they're also looking for edema at the back of the eye. This is where you want to get in with a doc really fast or soon. You don't want to wait until there's a major problem. The idea is let's see them early, let's monitor it regularly, so that if there is a problem, we can catch it early when it's easier to control. Kidney stuff is the same way. Knowing is half the battle of knowing that we need to sharpen up the game in whatever area needs to be sharpened up at. Neuropathy stuff is high blood sugar eats away the coating on our nerves. So you kind of think of our nerves as electrical wires with the insulation. High blood sugar is eating away that insulation. So by the time you get neuropathy, you've got parts where the nerve cover that's supposed to insulate it to only get one signal at a time, that cover's gone. So now there's a bunch of things hitting a signal there. And that can be some of the challenge that happens with high blood sugars as well. And in addition, when you've got blood pressure problems or neuropathies, when you're doing a walk or a workout and you're trying to do that target heart rate, be safe, because some of your medicines purposely don't let your heart rate go up. So it's not worth a twisted ankle or a pulled hip or a shoulder, because we might not get to the target heart rate, but the important part is that you're moving. So start with wherever you can and move as much as you can. And have a safe holiday. And maybe connect up with this diabetes care and education specialist or your healthcare team for a good plan. It's still open enrollment, so this is the time that if your insurance plan didn't cover your care needs as good as you had hoped it would, or it didn't work out as good as you could because new things got added that you weren't planning on last year when you chose a plan, please check carefully if maybe the plan you got is the best thing you've got. But if you got a plan that didn't cover insulin, or the next levels up, check in to see if we can get one that does. Or if your copay was like, whoa, this is way too much for all the care you need, maybe there's one with a lower copay, but you pay a little more each month. But definitely take your list of meds, take your list of health concerns, and find out, it doesn't hurt to look at a higher quality or a higher cost plan to see if maybe at the end of the year it really costs less, even though it sounds terrible to cost a little more each month. But make sure that things changed. I start from January, honest, and I let people know when they're kind of like, hey, this was covered last month and now it's a new plan and it's not covered. And then it's finding what is covered, okay? Because some of your meds that were covered this year, there are cousins. They're all kind of in that same class. The new plan may want you to change. And it's terrible to find out that the change had to happen in March. When it's like, okay, here's the next 90 days worth of medicine. So being aware that things in your plan may change, and they should be telling you this ahead of time. So check in to make sure so you don't get sticker shock in January. Or if something changed in like your prescription plan right now may have sent you a message that says they're not covering this anymore, or they're going to change to something else. Start preparing now so that you're not in shock in January of what the new limits are, or the new copays, or new deductibles. Also plan for next year, or if you can, or still this year, if you were looking at adding some technology or devices to your management. Once you've paid your deductible, it's a great time to talk about an insulin pump. It's a great time to talk about the fancy, InPen. It's a smart insulin pen, or other devices that are out there where, there's an upfront device thing. So once your deductible's paid, that's a great time to kind of check in to see, hey, maybe we can get that now, or maybe we're going to aim for that next year, because that technology is always greatly improving, and there's a lot of new tips and tricks to the trade with those as well. Okay? Any questions? Well, I hope you have a good holiday season. Make a deal with your diabetes team to say, yes, I know I have diabetes. They don't need to remind you, because you know. Thank you so much for attending.